Welcome to Raised on D&D podcast. Each month, Raised on D&D brings you inspirational interviews with tips and strategies to enrich your family's gaming experience.
Your host for Raised on D&D has been a game master for 30 years and father to 3 gamers. Here is Nick Cardarelli.
Welcome back, gamers. I'm your host, Nick Cardarelli, and this is Raised on D&D. My next guest is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She's the host of the Friday game night on homeschoolconnections.com for Catholic homeschooled kids from all over the country. She's currently designing a D&D 5e campaign for Catholic teens and is the dungeon master for her family and friends. Please welcome Marlana Weber. Hi, Lena.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
How did you start playing tabletop role-playing games? Can you take us back to your first experience, how that all started?
I can. It was a little more recent compared to some. It was about 2.5 years ago now. And I had my very first introduction to actual role-playing was back in the 90s when it was AOL chats, and it was just straight storytelling, and you could kind of roll digital dice on there, but it was mostly just straight storytelling. And I fell in love with role playing in that sense. And as a teenager then, though, back then it was hard to find people that were very open about playing D&D, and finding a group to play with. So as my kids got older and they got to about 11, 12 years old, Dungeons & Dragons released the starter kit. And I thought, you know what? Here's a chance that I never had an opportunity to play this or learn this. You guys are going to come in with me and we're going to learn this together. So about 2.5 years ago, I got the starter kit for us as a family and started there. And I just kind of threw myself into it. I had a friend who played D&D and I asked her, can you help teach me some of what's going on in here and what I'm reading? And we went for it and we got the regular starter kit and we got the Stranger Things starter kit, and that's where we started. So
awesome. That is fantastic. And so you went from not having played really any tabletop RPG and you jumped right into the role of the dungeon master.
FDM, right? Yeah. Which now that I've had some experience as being the DM for them and also being a player and, a big campaign and another campaign that just started, I realized how a little bit, throwing myself to the wolves that was. And to top it off, if you're familiar with the Stranger Things campaign, which is the very first one we did, it is very loose, very 80s feel. And it's really just improv and think of it on the fly. And that's what we did. But we still had a ton of fun. My kids were big Stranger Things fans, and it was a really good one to start off on to introduce them to with the Stranger Things campaigns.
That is really good. Lena, how many children do you have?
I have 3 kids, all boys, 14, almost 13, and 5.
Wow. Okay. I've got 3 myself. My oldest is 15. My middle one's actually turning 14 just a little bit. And then I have my 12-year-old is going to be turning 13 at the end of the year. So all little stair steps real close together. You mentioned that you were Stranger Things fans with your children. Did they ask you for Dungeons and Dragons after watching Stranger Things and seeing the tabletop playing scenes?
They actually did not. They watched it and they knew of it then. And they had heard a little bit of it through a friend of mine had played. And so they knew of Dungeons and Dragons and they knew a little bit about that, but they had never really approached me about it. And I had not even seen an episode yet when we were actually starting it. They were the fans, and I just took the campaign kit and I said, sure, why not? Let's go with it. I hadn't even watched an episode, but I said, what? Well, we'll go for it. You guys seem interested in this one, so we'll go with it. But I was the one who was interested, and so it was sort of a happy medium when I got the Lost Minds of Phandelver starter kit, and I thought, oh, that's a good place to start. But then right after that, I believe it was the Stranger Things starter kit came out, and I thought, oh, here's a good way to really kind of hook them into wanting to learn this with me. I'll grab this. At the time, now I've seen the show and I love it. But at the time, I had never seen the show. And I was like, sure, let's try this. Why not? And that really got their attention then, especially because my second oldest was a really big fan. The oldest likes it, but second oldest was a really big fan. So he was very excited to jump in. And he's like, oh, it is just like Stranger Things. And so even though he didn't ask originally because he saw it on the show, it was me who initiated it, that I had always wanted to learn. And when I saw they had starter kits, here we go. Here's our chance. You guys are old enough and you're going to learn with me.
And that's fantastic advice. You knew what they were into, and you used that to help them get to the gaming table. And that's one of the things we talk about on the show all the time is whatever they're watching, whatever media they're consuming, that kind of thing. If you're lucky enough to have a setting book of that franchise, great. If not, you can always tailor it, right?
Yep.
So that's fantastic. Now, Lena, everyone's familiar with homeschooling now since the lockdowns and 2020 and the COVID crisis. But you've been homeschooling a lot longer than the last year and a half. How long have you been homeschooling your children?
We've been homeschooling for 9 years. So ever since my children have never stepped foot in a traditional school, they have been homeschooled since day one.
Now, there's a lot of stigmas about, I would say there's as many stigmas about homeschooling as there is about Dungeons and Dragons. And
Yes.
You do both, right? So
I do both.
you do both. So with homeschooling, I really think until 2020, where people were kind of made to homeschool, they had certain perceptions of what homeschoolers do, what they don't do, those kind of things. And there's lots of different types of homeschooling. A lot of people don't understand that, yes, it can be online school with public schools, like a lot of people have experienced in 2020, but it also can be curriculum-based, guided by the parents to the children homeschooling. And that curriculum can be bought, just like a school buys their curriculum, right? It can be brought into the house. You can design your own curriculum. You can have more of a classical curriculum. So those kind of things. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about your style of homeschooling, what format you like to use?
Yeah, we have a little bit of a mishmash. So when they very first started, my mom was doing most of the homeschooling for me. So they were homeschooling with their granny. My mom was a public school teacher for 40 years, and we really wanted to homeschool. And at the time, I was still working. I was working in retail, and she retired. And I thought, okay, how are we going to make this work? What are we going to do? We considered enrolling them in a Catholic school. The Catholic school closed down right before 2 years before my son would have entered kindergarten. So I thought, well, there goes that idea. So she approached me and said, I know you kind of wanted to do this, and I can school the boys for you.
Wow.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. So we talked together and we sat down and we worked together and we looked at curriculums together and what she would do. And what better than somebody who had taught education in a school for 40 years, K through 8, to help teach the boys. And so we sat down, we looked at a couple different curriculums together, plus all of her just innate knowledge of 40 years of experience. But we did find a curriculum that we liked, we enjoyed, and then had to change up along the way, because that's really what a lot of homeschooling is too. You start on one thing and you realize that worked for that kid, but that certainly did not work for that child. So let's switch it up a bit and let's try this and let's try that. And a lot of adapting along the way. So we've never really been unschoolers with the big kids. We did have we had a time that we sat down. Just for us, it just made it easier to sit down at a semi-regular time and go through things. But boy, our workday goes much faster than it would in a regular school day.
We've been homeschooling for 11 years, and Lena, you're absolutely right. Homeschooling is a constantly evolving situation. We've had book curriculum, we've had workbooks, we've done some unschooling, especially during the summer, some self-led education as they started to develop their own likes and dislikes and their own talents, and we kind of fostered those interests and talents and things like that. My wife and I have been role-playing with the children now for about 9 years. They've been playing tabletop role-playing games. So they've been raised on D&D and a variety of other tabletop role-playing games. Homeschooling, though, coupled with Dungeons and Dragons, is a huge benefit. Lena, can you share with us some of the benefits that you've seen at home with the children now that you've introduced tabletop role-playing games into the home?
Absolutely. Since introducing them, obviously, of the first thing you can go to is, well, obviously there's math in D&D, even the simplest of things, tallying up dice, it makes you quicker. But the big thing I've noticed is the creativity that comes with it, that really just allows their mind to escape and really gets the creative juices flowing and gets the storytelling going. And what's interesting is that it's been a good experience. My oldest has dyslexia, and it's been a really positive experience for him to be able to immerse himself in a story without the struggle of words on a page quite as much. He gets to tell his story, but then it also slyly sort of makes him work with that because he's reading his character sheet. He's looking at that. He's learning new words from this. He's learning these things. And I found with him with dyslexia, it seems to just not inhibit him. It's a struggle to be a dyslexic in the world, and to be able to have that story to tell, it unleashes that creativity where he doesn't have to write down these stories that you have in your head, but it's a struggle for him to write down on paper. Now he can just live it out at a table. And so that's been really positive. And then my other one he's like me, math is not your strong point. I'm the one who will sit there at the table. And when I drop down, 7d6 for my sneak attack, bear with me a minute as I sit here and slowly count it out. My poor party has to listen to me. Hold on, I got to think this through, and for him, it helps him get stronger in those, try to get on those quick math skills as well. And even for my littlest one, he now is just coming into where he's going to be starting homeschooling and stuff like that. But he's learning numbers through the tabletop because he wants to be like big brothers. And so he knows what natural 1 is now, and he knows what natural 20 is now. And he learns all his numbers through the through the D20 and rolls it down and practices numbers. So it's a great experience from the biggest to the littlest.
One of the biggest benefits for tabletop role-playing games for homeschooling families is it can cost next to nothing. So
Absolutely.
A lot of people think you have to buy all the hardback books, you've got to buy the miniatures, you've got to buy all the dice, all those things. Folks, if you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons specifically, if you go to dndbeyond.com, you can get all the rules that you need to run D&D for free. The rules are put out there for free. Dice, you can download dice apps on your phone. Okay. So between free dice apps and free rules, and they're drivethrurpg.com is a store that you can buy games as PDFs or resources. And as homeschool families, we love finding out about new resources. We love finding out about those printable websites and all of those things. Miniatures, there are paper miniatures a lot of the time for free or for very, very inexpensive that you can buy. Oakham Arts Games that you can find on drivethrurpg.com also has paper miniatures, very inexpensive, that you can customize, you can print out and use at the game table. So don't go to your local bookstore and see the $40 books that you need 3 of, and see the $12 dice that you need 1 for each player for, and the metal miniatures or the plastic miniatures that you have to paint. You have to spend hours painting. Don't let any of that stuff stop you from bringing tabletop role-playing games to the house. Just go online, find the resources just like you would for curriculum, and print those things out for free and sit down and start gaming as a family, and you'll see the benefits and reap the joy of that.
One thing we did early on when we didn't have many minis or anything like that yet, and just kind of rolled out a piece of paper for a campaign and literally took board games and the little board game pieces that are like little thing, whatever you can find, and use those as place markers, and told them, theater of the mind, here you go. This little red peg, this is you, and this little blue one, that's you. And here's a couple things, and here's the knolls that are in the cave, and here we go, And so it's really easy to think on the fly, and it promotes the imagination then. It makes them, it's not as cool as a beautifully painted mini, but If I tried to paint a mini, it would be a disaster. So you might as well just use the theater of the mind to, to go with this. So there's so many ways you can make it work. Find your Monopoly pieces or something like that. There's all kinds of ways you can make it work for inexpensive without really having to invest into anything.
Okay.
I saw somebody on one of the groups recently had gone camping and they got reined in on camping, but luckily somebody brought a campaign book and they literally took snacks of their food and put it out on a table together inside their tent. And of course the jokes went on that every time you killed every time you killed a bad guy, did you get to eat it? But I mean, you can think on the fly.
That's wonderful that you're already seeing those benefits. And of course, the biggest benefit of all is the family is spending time together and bonding over these stories and having these shared experiences, which is so important, even for us homeschoolers that are with each other all the time, because sometimes we get bogged down in there's no separation between parent and teacher. There's no separation between schoolwork and chores. Those lines are not very well defined for us as homeschoolers. And so people are like, oh, you're all together all the time, so you must all love each other. Well,
yeah, kind of, sort of. Well, and that's one thing that I've noticed for them, that, having some kids close in age, the typical Catholics, we got our kids just back to back. And so my older two, they're 14 months apart. So there has been many times where they butt heads together. There's been many times where they will sit there and chatter on about what they enjoy together. But there's also times where you look at them and go, oh man, I don't know if you guys are going to make it together, and bringing them to the table, it forces them, whether they like it or not, to work together. And there was times, even sometimes especially in the early days, where I had to remind them, you're a party together. You're better as a team. And it forced them to be better as a team. And as they've gotten older, and more experience, they realize, oh yeah, this is easier if we just agree on which direction to go together. So it has really built up a lot of confidence with each other and teamwork with each other that they may not have necessarily had in, a normal experience just sitting around the house, or they might just either not sit together or they might butt heads together. You did this, you took this, you stole that, whatever. No, It forces them to sit down together and agree on something and work together to get that mimic, or, to find that stone that you're looking for.
And I've been playing tabletop role-playing games for over 30 years. And one of the things that I've seen time and time again is when you have those bonds made at the gaming table, those bonds last a lifetime. There are people that are still dear friends of mine that we met rolling dice, and we may not see each other for 5, 10, 15 years. And then when we get back together, we talk about that one time with that troll and in that dungeon. And it brings us right back to that friendship that we formed all those years ago. And to be able to give that gift of friendship to siblings, it's invaluable. It's immeasurable. What a wonderful gift you've given your children by role-playing with them at home. But Lena, you're not just gaming with your family now. Now you work for homeschoolconnections.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what do you do for them?
I am. So my technical job title is the internal social media manager. I do not do social media on the Facebook page or anything like that. We have 2 communities that are just for the families of Homeschool Connections. Well, the one is for people interested in families of Homeschool Connections. So we have a parent community. And earlier this year, we started a student community called the Student Cafe. And before that, what I started was I had this idea that I thought, with this pandemic, and we had just moved to Pittsburgh and really didn't know anybody yet. And we moved literally 1 week before the pandemic started. So talk about a rough time to try to meet people. So as the year went on, and my boys started with Homeschool Connections as students, which is all online courses that you get to customize and make your kids' own schedule and classes they need. And I had this idea and I presented it to the owners saying, I think a game night would be really fun for these kids. Like, I want my kids to have an opportunity to meet other homeschoolers. And so I started this game night with them. And so that evolved into this idea that they had already been toying with to create a student community. They already had the parent community. It evolved to this idea to create the student community. It had already been thrown out there by a former student that's now working for Homeschool Connections. And seeing how much the kids really wanted this and needed this bond together, the owners went, you know what? Let's try it. This is a little bit of a risk to put a bunch of middle schoolers and high schoolers in a forum together and see what happens, but let's try it. And we tried it. And I started off as a volunteer, as a moderator on the community. And between that and the game night that I had started hosting for them, and I was hosting a parent chat where parents could just come together and hang out, they approached me and were like, we love what you're doing. Can you please come and continue doing this, as part-time work for us? So I started as there. So joke, I really am just being an extrovert for the community. I'm already very extroverted. And I am just out there building community is really what I am doing, building community for these families. And the parent side, I try to get them talking and engaged and help provide support for them. And for the students, the same thing, but on the student side, to provide a safe place for them to be able to talk about things in a safe environment and keep it within our faith. But they want that. They want to be able to talk to people. And so it provides a place for them. So internal social media managers, we have 2 communities, and I'm basically one of the ones that helps majorly run the communities. So
that is really, really incredible. And as a homeschooling parent, and we say it all the time, we take it semester by semester, year by year, right? We're constantly reevaluating. We're saying, why are we still doing this? Why are we homeschooling another year? And we go through that process, and we have to say, okay, no, we're making strides. We're doing it right. We can see the benefits. We can see the fruit. We're going to keep going. One more semester, just one more semester.
Just one more, just a little bit more.
and we've been doing one more semester now for 11 years, and you've been doing it now for 9. So, that's how you do it. You take it one semester at a time. But what homeschoolers who are listening already know is, as parents, it's hard. We were told by people, oh, well, your kids are homeschooled, so they didn't have any problems in 2020 because they were used to it, right? Nope. And what they didn't understand is, with homeschooling, not only are we involved with other homeschooling groups out in the community, but a lot of our education is real world based. And what we mean by real world based is, we're going to museums, we're going to businesses, we're going to the grocery store, we're going to places where in a adult life, you would be going to these places to either do commerce, or you're going to these places to learn and enjoy and socialize and things like that. And so with the lockdowns, that cut us off. Would you agree, Elena?
Absolutely. I heard that so much, and I think every single homeschooler heard that. Well, aren't you used to this? No, this is harder. And now they're cut off from their extracurricular activities because everything is shut down. They're cut off from museums. They're cut off from the parks. I have this picture of, my son, trying to, littlest one, trying to climb on this playground with this big sign, or you're trying to corral him back. No, we can't be here. We're just here to walk today. And this big sign that's kids can't be out here, playground is shut down. And I'm look at you, rebellious child, with this sign out there. But yeah, we were hit very hard as homeschoolers, just as, I don't want to devalue anything that everybody struggled with that. I would say, everybody struggled, and we struggled, I think, just as much in our own way, that we, our kids were cut off from so much, and that was really hard for them.
So you creating a community for the children to be able to connect with people online in a safe environment is huge, just huge. Have you gotten a chance to run tabletop role-playing games on the Friday night game nights for the homeschoolers yet?
Not yet. That is a plan. That it probably will not be on Friday night, because our Friday night group has a couple different things. We have grown so much. It started off of us playing Among Us online together, is where it started. And it has grown to our Homeschool Connections has their own Minecraft server for kids. So we have like 30 students almost that come on a regular basis on Friday night. So we have groups that play Among Us. We have some groups that play Minecraft, or they start in Among Us and they go to Minecraft. We have some where we'll do a more try to recreate the traditional tabletop gaming feel, not role playing, but just Pictionary. We'll go on and we'll play Scribble.io or Pictionary on there to recreate and get those people talking and things like that. But then I did have a couple students, one student in particular that has been a D&D player for a couple years, and through talking on our boards realized, oh, you play D&D. Oh, I play D&D. And she was kind of in the middle of in a break between two campaigns over the summer, and through bouncing ideas back and forth with each other. And we knew some of these students really wanted to learn, but they don't have an opportunity to be able to learn how to play D&D, and they're interested in it. And so we kind of brainstormed together and thought, maybe we can present to some of these students that are interested. We can play D&D online together. We'll get up Roll20 or something like that, and let's do this. So we reached out, and we've got a group they're about to have session 0 next week. So it'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to leave our game night for those that are used to the video game side, and then we're also kind of opening it up, and I'm expanding it to this. And admittedly, we had to sort of tread the water a little carefully in that conversation of saying, this is my project, essentially. Like, this isn't necessarily something being promoted by my work. It was my personal experience that as a teenager, I wanted to learn how to role play and do tabletop role play. And I didn't get the opportunity to do it because I didn't know anybody. Well, now we live in this great digital age where everybody around the world can connect with each other. So I'm presenting this to them. And there was a little bit of hesitancy from a couple people over, you're Catholic and you play D&D? Wait, hold on. Is that okay? And so I made it very clear. I said, this is not necessarily Homeschool Connections sponsored, but this is me sponsored. And I talk with you guys every day in our community. So those of you that are in our community that are interested in this, reach out to me. We're getting something going. Let's do this. There's so much value in this that you can experience. So we're really looking forward to starting that. So we're going to start session 0 next week.
Since the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, one of the things that a lot of people are confused about is how people of faith can play Dungeons and Dragons. And I've spoken with Derek White, the Geek Preacher, on here. I've talked with Jeremiah Kaplan, who uses Dungeons and Dragons at his synagogue, can enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, and that Dungeons and Dragons is not in some way against Christianity or Christianity is incompatible with it. A lot of people don't know this, but myself, I'm Catholic as well, very active in our parish community. And my wife is a certified catechist for the Diocese of Orlando here in Florida. I want to say that they were 9, 8, and 7 is when we sat down and said, we're going to do a string of full sessions with the same characters going through and leveling up and all that. My middle one wanted to play a paladin, and because he was just excited. He wanted to play a knight with a shield and a sword and full plate armor and all that, right? He was very excited. So he chose paladin as his class. And I said, okay, well, a paladin has to choose a deity. Well, here is the book, and you can select any of these deities to be your patron, or you can pick a handful of them, that kind of thing. And because they had had a classical education that included Greek mythology, it wasn't foreign to them, the idea of polytheism or anything like that. But something happened that I didn't expect. And it was my middle one says, I don't feel comfortable selecting one of these other deities. And I was surprised. I said, well, it's okay. It's just make believe. You're not actually worshiping, Pelor or Grom, right? None of that. But he said he was uncomfortable with it. And there's a lot of talk in the media right now about making people feel welcomed and included at the gaming table Okay. And we want everyone to feel like they can sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons, regardless of their expression of life. I took that same philosophy and I applied it to my son. And instead of saying to him, well, you can't play this game or you can't play a paladin unless you select one of these fantasy deities, I said, okay, well, who do you want to be? And he said, I want to be a knight of the church. I want to be like a medieval knight. I want to be like a hospitaller or a Templar. And I said, okay. I said, you can do that.
Yep.
And so what we realized was they had this connection with their faith and with their culture in the church. And we said, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue with that. And I think you and I both belong to Catholic Role Players on Facebook, that group. It's got quite a bit of members. And I started a very heated, I didn't realize it was going to be heated, but I started a heated conversation where I asked, do you incorporate your Catholicism in your tabletop role playing? Okay. And I understood where everybody was coming from. And a lot of them said, well, I don't use real world religions. I think that's disrespectful. Okay, that's good. Other people, though, said, well, we don't do it as in saying full recited prayers during a game session or something like that, because we don't want to cheapen or disrespect the sacred. But I was surprised by how many Catholic families said, yes, we use guardian angels and patron saints, and the temples in D&D are churches and cathedrals. And in our own campaign, we would have clerics who were different kinds of Catholic clergy or religious, right? So we had an episode where they had to take on orcs that were attacking the valley. Well, those orcs raided a convent, and some of the nuns escaped and some were trapped inside. And they went to the heroes, and the heroes went and rescued the nuns with the help of the cloistered nuns who escaped. They were very excited about that. They received a mission from the Archbishop of Greyhawk to go clear out a haunted house. Things like that. So we didn't trivialize or cheapen the sacred. What we did instead was we took the cultural aspects, the artistic aspects of our faith and our religion, and applied it into the fantasy world the same way you would if you were playing a medieval tabletop role-playing games. We still had polytheism. We still had other deities. We still had magic users. We still had all the things that are Dungeons and Dragons. The only thing that was different, one, it was a way for the children to learn the different types of religious. So we had Dominicans, Franciscans, Poor Clares. We had all of those represented in NPCs. We use those things also to let them know, okay, well, this person is a priest, so we can trust him when he says, I need your help with this. Or this person's supposed to be a friar, but he's acting this way, which is not what he should be acting like. So now we don't trust him. Something's not right. So by doing that, that's how we integrated Catholicism into Dungeons and Dragons. Lena, have you had similar experiences?
Not with my own kids yet. They haven't really picked anything yet that's really required deity type of things. I just started into another campaign, and it was a group of Catholic peoples from our Catholic Roleplay Facebook group. And I thought, what a perfect opportunity to implement this idea that I had to play a protector, Aasimar, and to be a life cleric. And I said, she is literally the guardian angel of the group. Like, I said, this is my goal. I said, okay, well, maybe she's not literally the guardian angel, but I had this vision, and I said, I want her to pretend to be like a guardian angel. Like, she's out here to protect, and chose one of the D&D deities. She's a cleric of Lathander. But I play her as sort of I do in real life, a little bit evangelical at times, where if you get me started, I can be very, quiet and low key. But at the same time, if you would like to talk to me about it, I will tell you how I feel. And so I go out. She's very like the power of Lathander and, the dawn of Lathander. But in my own home, the kids have not really picked anything as of yet. One is a bard. The other one's been, rogue, stuff like that. So they haven't, been things that are, totally, I think one time there was a wizard, so they haven't really picked anything at this point for that. But it was an interesting, looking over some of the campaigns to run for these Catholic teenagers as well, debating, are you going to be comfortable with, if we start off on a campaign, maybe do we want to start off on starter kit Lost Mines of Phandelver? Because I also have this other I also found this other campaign on Roll20 that's called Wardlings, and it's the whole thing is another deity, a D&D style deity that gives the gifts of magic to everybody. So I was like, are they going to be comfortable with this? Are they not going to be? And because you want to make them comfortable. You don't want them to feel, I'm not comfortable with that. And if nobody was comfortable with it, just the same as you, I already told them it's fine. We don't have to do that. Maybe we'll start off on, and everybody's been very comfortable with it, because I don't know if it's more so for us as homeschoolers that maybe we've exposed them, maybe not. I don't know, to sort of the real world a little bit more. They're in the real world. They're not in a classroom bubble of 20 of the same aged kids. They're out there. They're seeing the real life a lot more and experience than I feel like traditional schools sometimes get to give your kids. You see all sorts of walks of life. They're, in theater with this person who believes this faith, this person who believes this faith, this person who doesn't believe anything at all. And you learn to get along with those people, and you learn how to work with those people. And in a way that sort of rolls into the role playing is, you learn that if you're not comfortable with it, that's okay. Like your son, you choose Christian God and we'll work that in, then that's fine. If you're comfortable with this because it's just role playing, then we can do that too. But it seems they're very comfortable with it. It doesn't bother them. The kids that I've talked to so far don't seem bothered by it. My kids have not been bothered by it. They understand it's just stories. I'm a big fantasy geek, and so they have listened to me their whole lives ramble on about things. One of my kids last year with Homeschool Connections, one of those topics was they did a paper on Greeks and a little bit of the Greek Olympics and how much the Greek gods played into the Greek Olympics and all of that. So like you said, they're familiar with it, and that's just part of life, and you can choose that path or not. And it's really about making them whatever they're comfortable with. And so, yeah, we haven't experienced it directly in my table, but very aware of it for the kids that I play with in the future.
And just so everyone's clear, because I know that I don't want anyone taking a sound bite and flaming me on Twitter. Okay. We know that homeschooling isn't for everyone. And it's not always the best option for every family. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is as homeschoolers, we believe that everyone should be able to choose what type of education style their family uses to become successful. A lot of people don't realize this, though, but they think that because our children are kept at home and are taught at home, that they're in an echo chamber, that they don't get diversity experience. They don't get to interact with people of different faiths or backgrounds or beliefs. But as you pointed out, they're in the community, and our communities are made of diversity, not only of backgrounds and different types of people, but like you mentioned, different philosophies, different theologies. or none at all, right? So those kind of things are something that we value as homeschoolers, is that ability to be able to recognize the differences in other people, and to be able to not just tolerate it. We don't tolerate people's differences. We enjoy it, we experience it, and we cooperate with people of different communities and different backgrounds and diversity. So that's fantastic that you are able to bring tabletop role-playing games to the homeschool connections kids from all over the country. Even though it's not official, it's not sponsored, but it's there and it's going to be available for them. So Lena, thank you so much for that. Is there anything you'd like to share with those parents who are listening, don't know how to fit tabletop role-playing games into their homeschooling scheduled day? So do you have any advice?
I think, as we mentioned earlier, finding a niche of something that they like that captures their interest, like starting with Stranger Things or something like that. If they love Stranger Things, and there's so many one shots or this or that, or little offshoot campaigns here and there that are, I think you even sent me some, the Star Wars. There's, you can find a little Star Wars campaign. You can find whatever it is they're interested in and make that to capture their interest and to go, hey, look, I have this, and sort of intrigue them to the table, bribe them to the table with that. and if they don't, then make it up. Your homeschoolers, we're used to thinking on the fly, just make it up then if you need to. I personally have not made up anything as of yet, but there's so many resources out there that I think you can find something that they're interested in. If they're into Minecraft, you could probably find something out there that is Minecraft related. I am sure in the ethers of the internet, somebody has created something that will work for your kid and your family to make it work. And I love your idea. You can start small. You can start in a 30-minute session. You can learn to, expand upon it, or sometimes something happens and you have to stop middle of the thing, or you might rush through it and go, you know what? Something came up real quick. The little one is crying. I'm just going to throw a couple NPCs in here and we're going to finish this out real quick to finish this encounter. And you learn, I think we're really good as homeschoolers to think on the fly and to adapt. And I think that's a great way to just roll with it. Just pun intended.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, one of the best things about D&D is using your imagination. You learn to adapt to anything that's in there and you can make it work,
Well, Lena, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for all that you're giving back to your homeschooling communities and fostering new Dungeons and Dragons players.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.